Content warning for discussions of child sexual and religious abuse. Someplace underneath.
I saw a video of this guy who just smashed his shin against like a metal pole, and I was talking to a fighter, and he said, well, what you do is you start them at a young age and you slowly kind of break their shins. And then they like rebuild stronger with like knots and stuff. So then you can just like literally take in like bam. And I want to throw up. And
I mean,
in
it's
my
part
head.
of, I mean, I understand why that's terrifying to you, but it is so ingrained in so many different kinds of forms of athleticism. It's like with point shoes, you're building up calluses, you're building up like the bone structure. You're literally changing your bone structure in your foot doing it. Oh. But at the same time, it's like this, I love it. It's like this revered art form that is like, you get this rite of passage when you get your first point shoes and you take your first point class. It's like this big momentous thing in your life. So I think there's like both sides of it a little bit.
Maybe that's why you like gore, like gory, bloody movies.
I think maybe that there's some of that. I think that I don't have a lot of other really masochistic tendencies really because I have that outlet. You know what I mean? Like no judgment if you have other ways to let those feelings out. But I do think like that maybe that's why I don't need to get like hung up on hooks and stuff, you know?
Oh, the hung up on hooks makes me want to shit my pants forever, fucking throw up and die. Like the skin that separates from the muscle, that's some Hellraiser business.
Yeah, but people love it. My dearly departed friend Doug Sackman did it all the time for fun, and he loved it.
Well, welcome to the show, everybody.
Some people start polygamous cults, some people hang from hooks, and I actually think the former is much more awful and dangerous because you are forcing other people into your kink. Whereas if you're hanging on hooks, unless you're doing it in an elementary school, you know, you're allowed to just go do that and be weird.
What if they were like reading to kids? Like reading Sun Up, Sun Down like a guy on hooks?
I would think that is, the left has gone too far. I don't think the left would want to do that.
No, the left is like, get these kids out of here.
Yeah. Welcome to Someplace Underneath. I'm Nellie Jean.
I'm Amber Nelson.
If you think about it, though, you do put kids in front of a big tortured corpse every Sunday morning, and that's kind of weird.
Oh my God, the lady we interviewed, one of her videos, she said her daughter came to her, something on her iPad was very upsetting, and she was like, I'm glad you came to me. She was worried it was going to be C-scam or something. Yeah. And it was a picture of Jesus Christ bloody on the cross. And she was like, oh, I guess like if I've never been exposed to this, this would be very violent.
It's very scary. It's torture. It's a torture porn movie.
It's torture. This whole thing is torture porn.
It is a little bit.
You get beaten and fucking cat o' nine tails. And
Yeah. We are. Yeah. It's a lot of, what is it called? Self-flagellation. But that's why I do point instead and do aerial stuff. And like, I do stunt work. I love all of it because I don't know, if to me, the control of that is like, I'm developing a skill set. That is autonomy. That is me choosing things for my body. Whereas if you are a part of a bigger church body, sometimes you are told you must do these uncomfortable things or else, and I think that's bad.
Right, or else you burn in hell or disappear.
Or you can never speak to your family again, you know. And my family did say if I did not get better at point, they were not going to talk to me anymore. But that's a whole other side, you know. Right. That's sort of an atheist family excommunication. I'm just kidding. They were very supportive of my dancing.
Of course.
So, yeah, we are going to be going down this pathway today because I think it's a very important way to end this season. This is not a subject that needs to be discussed generally because so many people talk about it. It is very, what would you call it, like salacious, the idea of multiple wives. And there's this weird sort of undercurrent of like, is this almost sexy? But it's definitely not.
It's a kink, but they're usually dressed up in like an outfit that doesn't show any skin. So you think like, oh, it's their religion. But at the end of the day, this is a kink.
It is. I'm going to go ahead and say it is, especially with some of the groups we're going to discuss today. I'm not literally, I am incapable of going down the pathway of all of these groups because it would take months. It is such a vast, dense history. I'm going to give you a Cliff's Notes version if people still even fucking know what that means. I'm going to give you what do people, I guess I'm going to give you an AI chat, GPT, GPS, shortened version of it.
Hold down. Wait, what's that?
Why did I just suddenly become 85 years old? I don't know what that was.
I'm going to give you a chat GPT. Oh, what do? They say hold down for twice the speed. That's the modern day, which I always do because people don't talk fast enough for me.
I know. I know I don't sometimes either. And I'm just like, I know people are going to be speeding through this, but
no, you're great.
Sometimes you just got to talk slower and then people can speed up if they want, So we're going to have a very abridged backstory of how polygamy is still active today in these fringe groups because we need to get to the core of what it actually means for the mainstream Mormon church that has millions and millions of members because it is still very much a part of LDS culture. They just will not say that directly, but it is.
And they make laws. Mm-hmm. And they make a lot of laws. They're in the government.
Yep.
So if you're looking at it as like, this is this kink where you're just exploiting women, basically underage girls many times, what do you think they're going to pass at the law?
Yeah, it's concerning for all of us. And also it's important for us to remember that there are people out there right now in these groups, even in the mainstream church, who are not considered. Their thoughts are not heard. Some of these kids don't have freaking social security accounts. These are people who are at risk in ways that are very scary, and we need to talk about them, and they deserve to have a voice too. I just also, by the way, speaking of underage girls, this is, for example, one way in which in the laws, people of the LDS faith who are in the mainstream church are affecting things. In abhorrent Mormon news, Utah Senate President J. Stewart Adams has recently intervened when one of his 18-year-old relatives, so they didn't say who, I don't know if it's a great nephew or a grandson or something, but he was being charged with sexually assaulting a 13-year-old, and President J. Stewart Adams worked to get laws to be changed to drastically reduce the punishment to keep that specific crime off the sex offenders registry and also to reduce their jail time, which was none for this privileged young man.
He's old enough. Yeah, he's old enough to know better. You could be like, he's just a boy. No, she's like a child, like 13 years old.
Yes.
Is a baby.
And I would like to also add the caveat that there have been many adjustments to laws around older teens and relationships. And like, there are many people who think, there's things called like Romeo and Juliet laws where if you're both in high school and maybe somebody's about to turn 16 and they have an 18-year-old boyfriend, that's not ideal, but it maybe shouldn't be like, oh, that's a predator.
Right.
They're in school together. They're growing up, whatever. 13 years old is a middle school child. You're not even, most places in this country are in the same school because you are still a little kid at 13 years old. You might be in 7th grade when you're 13. 18 years old, if they're still in high school, is a senior or they've already graduated. It is unacceptable for that age range. That is gross and weird.
And instead of being like, hey, you're punished for this, it's let me just change the whole law.
Which he did. And then you then go, even if some people, for whatever weird reason, don't have an issue with that age gap, are they going to keep moving the goalposts? Because it seems like they are. And this is also just, of course, this man is saying, oh, it has nothing to do with my relative. It was just a thing we were already addressing. It just happened to benefit my direct lineage who did essay a 13-year-old and charges were pressed against him. It just helped him by chance. It wasn't because I was trying to help him. So whatever. It's nasty. It's also very scary that people who have the mindset of the LDS Church are going to be changing laws for everybody and potentially continuing to push the goalposts further and further away.
Right.
So suddenly it's 18 and well, she was 12, but like so mature. 11 is basically a
13,
teenager.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be doing that. We should be doing the opposite because we understand a lot more about biology, about how people's brains develop and what consent is and what children cannot consent to. And yet, these old ass dudes are going, I liked it better before when we didn't think about it. When they were just sort of like little objects we got to pat around.
God, it makes me so mad because you ask these assholes, like, what's your perfect definition of a world? They always describe a third world country. And I don't mean to say third world in a derogatory sense, but I mean like an underdeveloped one. Like,
impoverished country.
Impoverished. We want young women to be married off immediately and have sex with them immediately, and like a lot of abuse. Like kids can't consent, so I should be able to like touch whatever I want. So these girls are being brought up. And then who's going to raise the kids? What community do we have? Everybody's going to be fucking out of their minds.
Well, that's...
What? So you can get your nut on? So you can so you will burn down a country so you can come in a kid? I hope you hang yourself.
You're going to not like this episode very much because that's all we're going to be talking about today. This is what we see. And we can actually look at it through the episode today in our very abridged breakdown of the polygamy inside of the Mormon Church. You will see what 5 generations in looks like, and it is not good.
No, it's like me talk pretty one day.
Not only that, they become more and more unhinged on the children, like every single time that this happens. And I'll show you.
I'm scared, Natalie.
I'll show you proof of it.
I'm scared. You
should be. It's awful. It's awful, awful, awful what we're going to talk about. But I'm not talking about it because it's not discussed. It is... I'll tell you several different resources you can go to read about it. There's documentaries, there's books, there's podcasts. There's so much about this world because of how horrific it truly is. But I want to give you the synopsis of the history of it. So last week we discussed the various aspects of blatant and unrepentant racism in the mainstream LDS Church. Regardless of their wanting to repaint the history, it's just simply unavoidable that this church was founded on race superiority. That doesn't mean like a person of color can't be allowed to enjoy the LDS Church or that they shouldn't be there if they love the church. That's obviously not our place to say, and I hope that they find peace there. But we do need to address what the basis of it is. And many in this church who are at least a little aware of the white nationalist roots might argue that, well, that mentality is way more just like fringe. That's an extreme end. That's like we didn't interpret the word of God right and we fixed it.
They're lying.
They also probably, a lot of those people believe that. I think a lot of, I'm not talking about the top of the
echelon or whatever.
Echelon. They probably know they're lying. I think a lot of people inside the church just really don't know because they're told not to know.
Right. They're told. And it's like me and my community. And you're taught like worldliness is evil. Mm-hmm. So you stick around.
You don't read. You're literally told not to go read stuff online. And people obey it.
Okay, I won't read anything.
Yeah, I mean, the fear of losing your family, of being punished, like that is a real thing. I get it. I'm glad that I didn't grow up in it. That's for fucking sure. The problem with the mainstream church, that the problem is that with the mainstream church, the extreme ends, they kind of feed into one another. They aren't separated as much as they would like to believe. So this is the headline from an article in May of 2018 from the Salt Lake Tribune.
Right after the Mormon Church gave blacks the priesthood, a polygamous offshoot saw its ranks grow.
So,
they were like, a black man is in power. I got to go over here.
Yeah. So every time there is a human right given over in the church, it does actually drive out members into these other communities. And they are a lot more interconnected than they want to believe. So that's just in reference to, as we talked about the racism last time, a lot of these cults, these ones that branch off from the mainstream church, believe in white supremacy. They believe in women are not people, I guess.
Yeah.
Children are property. I get what I want. Nobody else can have it. sort of that mentality. And it's not that far off from the mainstream belief system. But anyway, this article that I just mentioned from 2018, it's discussing a particular sect, the AUB, which is one of the several that have branched from the main church, largely due to their wanting to practice polygamy. The AUB stands for the Apostolic United Brethren. Apostolic.
These cults love when words are hard to say, like IBLP.
Yeah.
Because you have to like stop and think and make sure it's right. Apostolic.
Yeah.
Something neurologically happens.
I think it's about like creating your own language that's hard for people to like get.
That's true.
I don't know why that word is so hard for me to say, but my body is rejecting it. So that's good, probably. This branch is a sort of friendly relationship with the mainstream church in a way, which is why I'm starting with it. It's maybe only a one-way friendly relationship. Like the AUB, I'm mostly just going to call it the AUB because I don't want to say it. They feel as though they're going to be rejoined with the mainstream church at one point. So they kind of are the closest to the mainstream in many ways. However, they have these more extremist beliefs, as mentioned in that article in 2018, that they have things that we're going to talk about that they're open about, which the mainstream church tries to pretend they don't believe anymore. So basically, in the 70s, when the black community was given, black men were given priesthood, a lot of these fringe, especially the AUB, they became a little bit more standoffish because that's very important to them that only special little white boys get to have but they're still closer than some of these other sects. Anyway, the AUB represents one of many breakoff groups who wanted to practice old Joey Smith's religion, but thought that the Brigham Church wasn't doing it right. That usually meant women and people of color have too many human rights. I'm going to try not to be petty this whole episode, but it's really hard because it's so stupid.
Yeah.
And I know that in this moment, I am not taking into account the time period of those women. Probably some of them were super relieved back in the 1800s to be in polygamy because there was lack of food and shelter, and it was probably scary.
Yeah, and probably they're like, I imagine one wife, you're just like, this guy again? Damn. But you can just be like, go over to Mary Jo over there. I'm tired. My pussy hurts.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that there were plenty of women, and I'm sure some who were also gay, who were happy to not have to have sex with their husband.
Oh, God. And they're like,
sure.
Yeah, that's Mary Lou. She's a really great sourdough bread maker. Doesn't really want to touch me, but she cleans the whole house.
Yeah, she's like, she loves cleaning. She's just like, as long as I'm brushing this floor, I ain't touching that guy's undernethers. So it's not as simple as like, these guys are all just little pervs and they're just like, none of the women wanted to be there and everything. I know that's not ultimately true, especially back in the 1800s. But some of it is still being driven by ego-horny man-children. And a lot of that is now perpetuating in modern day Mormonism. Polygamy has been a cornerstone of this whole shebang since the Joseph Smith days. And if we really want to look at it critically, I'll remind you that this all stems from Smith getting caught statutory.
But even at the time, people were like, hey, man, you can't do that.
Yeah.
That's really bad. And he was like, oh, well, God says I can. And they're like, oh, fuck, God says he can.
Yes.
It's the whole religion.
Well,
it's a liar.
A huge part of it is him being caught with his minor servant girl by one of the church members, and that led him to this amazing revelation, right? Which eventually led to Joseph writing what is called the Doctrine and Covenants. This was a series of lectures, aka Doctrine, and Revelations, aka Covenants, by Joseph Smith prior to his death, originally titled Doctrine and Covenants of the Church of Latter-day Saints, carefully selected from the revelations of God.
Again, with those damn words.
So many words. This is a little screen grab of the cover of the 1835 edition there, Amber.
Wow.
So this was actually the second edition. The 1835 is what we have the picture of. The first edition, a lot of it was destroyed by anti-Mormons.
Oh, yeah, because I remember people at that time were like, fuck this guy, and they tarred and feathered him.
They did.
So even 1800s people were like, we don't like him.
Yes, very much so. And I probably wouldn't agree with a lot of the people who didn't like the Mormons. They probably also had shitty ideas that I wouldn't like too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even people with shitty ideas. That's like the new conservative thing of like, you're far right. And like in the past, you'd just be considered normal. I'm like, no, actually, you would be considered a creep in the 1800s too.
Yeah, for sure.
They would not like you.
No, they would not have liked them. So, yes, this is what this document is. It's called Doctrine Covenants, and what it is another scriptural piece of, like, they basically consider this gospel inside of the church. So we discussed the other one that they consider gospel, the Pearl of Great Price, last episode, which justified a lot of racist ideologies and stuff like that, which was kind of like put together after Smith's death. It was his writings, but somebody put it all together, made it the Pearl of Great Price, and then put it out and it became scriptural. Smith himself put out the Doctrine and Covenants during his lifetime. And while there are so many little thoughts in this book, the most famous and controversial one is known as D&C 132. I mean, there are a lot of controversial ones in there, a lot of stuff in there. But D&C 132 is pretty renowned because it has to do with his revelation that he was to have more wives.
Oh, Dick and Cock.
Dick and Cock,
132.
Yes. Dick and Cock 132. Yeah, and there are so many crazy things in the D&C, which is what most people call it, that the modern day church kind of had to do some like Cirque du Soleil worthy contortion acts to make it make sense in the modern day, but they have to because it was canonized. So we have Book of Mormon, we have Pearl of Great Price, and we have Doctrine and Covenants all next to the Bible, essentially. These are all equally as of God as the Bible to Mormons.
Remind me again what canonized mean? It's just like, this is really important.
Yeah, they basically like go, they have a wand and they go, now it's our scripture. You have to take it in and read it as though it is word of God.
Whoa.
Just like the Bible.
Can something be like double canonized?
I'm sure.
Like, oh yeah, I got triple canonized.
Yeah, I mean, it's all made up. So, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, make something you've done. Make one of your stand-up shows triple canonized.
Oh, fuck, you can't go past that.
No, until you get quadruple canonized. So he had lots of things to say in this. And also there were other guys. You know how in the Bible there's all these different, written by these different guys things?
Yeah.
So a couple of his contemporaries also that he like were bros with had their own revelations in there too. So this was a thing that became very, very important basically as soon as it was written. And it's really wild to think about things like D&C 132 causing this level of uproar almost 200 years later. Wild to think that this one man's like post-nut clarity had this much suffering attached to it. It's just really crazy to think about. Flap of a butterfly wings, you know?
Gosh.
Each one of these covenants are long and quite boring, in my opinion. And in my opinion, they're very silly, a lot of them. You can go read them right now on the Latter-day Saints website. There, you can go find the Doctrine and Covenants and read through all of them. But 132 in particular, in my opinion, is so juvenile. I just cannot take it seriously. It is so obviously written by a man who has a boner to justify why he has to have sex with a bunch of women. Especially the parts in 132 that directly address his personal wife, his alive wife, are in their scriptures. So it's essentially like, specifically verses 51 through 54, which are literally threatening his wife Emma.
Oh. Verily I say unto you, a commandment I give unto my handmaid Emma Smith, your wife, whom I have given unto you, that she stay herself and partake not of that which I command you to offer unto her. For I did it, said the Lord, to prove you all as I did Abraham, and I might require an offering at your hand by covenant and sacrifice.
So what that is saying...
Yeah, what the hell is he talking about?
That one specifically says, God said, I am supposed to have sex with these other women and be married to them, but you are not supposed to have sex with other men.
Oh, right.
That's what God said.
Right, because if she gets pregnant, it's like, is it my kid or is it
Also,
John's
I just
kid?
think he probably if you're in this mindset, you think of her as your possession anyway, you know?
There's a lot of religions and guys that do that. It's just
it's
horny,
intimidation based. It's bonerific.
It's a kink, and it's like it's painful BDSM because you're torturing somebody and they're passing it off as God.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. Like just reading these things, it just does. It's like they're putting into scripture like, verily I say unto you that thou Emma must keepeth thine legs closed. Uponst Adam, whomst thy doth witness you maketh eyes at this past Thursday.
God, he would have loved Andrew Tate.
He would have. Yeah. Yeah, I bequeath you to go unto forth, blow with thine backs out. Mayeth your pull-out game be weak and your ropes be mighty, so saith the Lord. I'm joking, but that part's fake, obviously. That would be crazy if that was in there. I joke, but he threatens to murder her in this revelation, which is very real, verse 54.
And I command mine handmaid, Emma Smith, to abide and cleave unto my servant Joseph, and to no one else. But if she will not abide by this commandment, she will be destroyed, saith the Lord. For I am the Lord thy God, and will destroy her if she abide not by my law. Fuck him.
So that is in their Bible.
You have to do what I say. It's like a kid on the playground. Like, you do what I say. No, I'm the pirate. I'm the pirate, and you're the slave.
Mm-hmm. It is. And in those verses, essentially he says, you have to give me sex. You have to allow me to have other sex with other women. You can't have sex with other men or I will kill you, is what that says. So I hate it here. We're just starting off great.
Immediately horrible.
He does this after he starts banging these other women by many, many accounts, historical documents, witnesses, journals. He had already been sleeping with other women at this point, and then he decided, I'm going to put it in paper.
Right, because, I can't just have one woman in my life. I can't do that.
Well, I think also with the guys who really get successful in cults, if you think about the Jim Jones and stuff, they always end up needing more and more megalomania. So they turn to drugs. I imagine him consuming more and more women is like a power thing for him, so that he can gaslight himself into thinking he's more special. And you need that to maintain this facade. I think he has to consistently probably more chicks.
Yeah, at that point, it's not even the sex; it's just the power.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
yeah. When I did a stand-up show in New York, and then I got hired to go to the festival, and then the guy was like, we ended up not talking because I had to run to the subway, and so I got it. And he usually sleeps with the girls, and
is this in New York?
He is in New York. He's no longer working for the festival, but he would coerce them and be like, you got to have sex with me to get in. Yeah. But I missed that part, so he.
Sorry.
He called. I know. I missed it. I had to run at the subway like poor Cinderella before midnight. But he calls me up and he's like, "You have to change your whole act."
Oh, I know this story.
Yeah, even though I passed, the audience loved me. It's just a power thing.
Yeah, and also he was incorrect.
My act was great.
Yeah, and he didn't want you to make it more girly.
He said, "Make it. You have to be a good girl. You're kind of mean." And I tried it, and everybody hated it. And then I go on stage at the big show, and I do the act that got me there, and he got mad at me. And I had to stand there and be like, "Whatever, I just did it. What are you gonna do?"
Get out of here.
You fucking piece of shit.
Cleave unto my comedy and no others.
It's just power.
It is.
Because they're insecure fucks.
Oh, yeah. You have to act like that. You can't be confident and behave in that way. There's just no way.
Talentless. They know they're
talentless. A lot of times they're talentless. That is true. So he puts his polygamy into his religion officially, and his bros are like, hell yeah, dog, because he said all of them also needed to have multiple wives.
Right.
They're like, fuck yeah.
Is there enough women to go around?
And the women are like,
I'm scared.
Wait, what happened? What did God say? And quite a lot of 132 is threatening women generally. It basically made them feel as though they needed to behave in this way or else.
I wish a fucker would.
It's pretty creepy and it sucks. And I guess that's how you keep people down, is just scaring them in this way. So it worked.
I mean, here's my thing with like logistically about this. Like, just I'm thinking at numbers here. So I'm a man and I have 12 wives. But what about the other men in the community? They can't get a wife. There's a bunch of angry incels right now.
Well, that's interesting you say that because we're going to see that play out in modern time. And I can't speak for that time, but we have documentation of our modern culture of that very thing happening, and we'll talk about it. After this revelation comes into play in 1835, by the way, the church's stance for decades, really until the internet was made more available faster, was that Brigham was actually the polygamy guy. It wasn't Joseph. They really stood on 10 toes that like, it wasn't Joseph. That's why it's not a God thing. Like, it was just like a human error. Like Joseph would have never accidentally learned something that was wrong. But they eventually did have to pivot when information became available to people online that clearly Joseph was the one who started polygamy. It wasn't Brigham. So much like many fringe beliefs in a religion, the organization has to figure out how to maneuver when those beliefs become unpopular in society. For the LDS Church, it really became a matter of conflict with the United States government that led to, oh, wait, a new revelation has come, which, though, of course, was contention from within. It's not like whenever this new revelation came, everybody who was practicing polygamy inside the LDS Church was like, oh, okay, no problem. People had their drug now of having a bunch of lady servants, and they were like, I'm pretty sure you misheard the revelation, though, right? You didn't hear that correctly. But it was kind of necessary. Mostly because the U.S. government was really becoming aggressive with Mormonism. They were known primarily for the polygamy aspect of their religion, and the United States government did not care for it. They were mad, and they were starting to take away rights. They were starting to basically like challenge them owning property where they were and stuff like that. So there was a big issue with that. It wasn't because they necessarily wanted to stop polygamy. It was like, well, if we want to keep making money and like turning this over and having power, we have to. What's that? God actually said, we're done with polygamy now. That's how they tried to get around that, like the leadership, right? So in 1890, the sitting prophet Wilford Woodruff, which I really want to say Woodruff Wilson,
right?
But that's not it. Different person. Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson is the president. Wilford Woodruff is the sitting prophet president of the Mormon Church in 1890. Okay, there we go. He issued this new revelation. No more Mormon men are to take on plural wives. God called down and he said, we're good. We did it. Good job. Just one wife now. And again, this is really coincidental that the U.S. government was going to take all their stuff away at the same time. And this move, even though it wasn't popular in the Mormon Church, probably allowed the church to flourish into modern society because had they not, they probably would have been snuffed out by the government. But because they played ball with the church, they were able to kind of grow and be a big church eventually. That's just my guess. But it eased up the pressure on the church enough to allow the rest of the blooming United States to become, to acknowledge the state of Utah. So it was this whole shebang, song and dance thing from the wider scope of the United States while they're trying to make their polygamy thing work. And they're like, well, actually, God said it's fine, don't do it anymore. So this is known as the Official Declaration 1 by the Greater Body Church and was added into the Doctrine and Covenants. So Joseph gets killed. They have this D&C already. They use it as gospel. And then they start adding in these little things like this declaration gets added in going, actually, we're done with polygamy now.
Is it like amendments to the Constitution?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So you may be unshocked to know that a number of horn dogs who enjoyed their days being catered to by a bunch of chicks who were their eternal slaves did not believe this revelation was real, and they were pissed. They were like, you're making this up. All the other stuff's real. You're making this one up, though, mister. The ones who were mad but felt the need to conform to their church decided that, okay, if this revelation, this declaration's real, that probably means, oh, we're in the last days finally. This is, of course, the Latter-day Saints church. And so they just agreed, well, this just must be God changed us because we're about to all go be raptured or whatever. So some people decided that's why we have to stop running train on these ladies. But then a lot of other people in that same time period were like, No, you're wrong, actually. And multiple branch-offs began to sort of peel away from this time period. And you've most likely heard of a couple of them because some of them are still in existence.
Is this like the one with the ladies with the bangs?
One of them turned into it, yeah. And we'll talk about it. I knew exactly what you said with the woman with the bangs, unfortunately, because it's very unusual looking because guess what? Was a specific fetish of one guy, and that's why they all have to wear their hair like that. So one of the first large secretive trysts occurred in 1886, actually right before the official declaration, because the writing was kind of on the wall at that point. A group of men wanted to make Mormonism great again. They saw that things were changing. They didn't like it. They wanted to go back to Joseph's and they wanted to maintain polygamy. They didn't like these changes. It's such a human condition of wanting to take things back to the olden days, even though all the time the olden days are like a myth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. At what time was it? Where do you want to go?
Yeah.
Rome?
I think they want to go into, I think, especially
Caveman?
in modern times, I think they want to go into a TV show that they saw when they were a little kid.
I saw the Andy Griffith show and I read the comments. You know, Andy Griffith's a wholesome show. You read the comments, not so wholesome. And I think a lot of these guys, when they want it, they don't know where they want to go back because they want to go back to, I'm going to sound crazy here, but I do think the Eve and the apple, it's like a story, a bigger story for women, just being like, we should farm and we should like
totally
grow up and like not roll around like pigs in the mud. And men are very angry with us for that. So I think that's where they want to go back, is just rolling around like pigs in the mud.
I could almost appreciate that a lot more than just like, I want to just make sure other people don't have human rights. I wish that they would just want to roll around in the mud. Like, go for it, I guess.
They just want to be like a savage. That's it.
Yeah. I think so. I think it's a lot easier than complex human relationships and
taxes.
Nuance is a tough one for a lot of people. It's really, they need some black and white thinking, or they're gonna like go insane, I guess. But that's not how the world is not black and white. It just does not exist. You are fighting against nature if you want to think in that way. Unfortunately, you're gonna do stuff like make Mormonism great again, and then everything's gonna be great after that. When you have a bunch of these kind of entitled men, there's going to be more than one that claims they're the ones who've actually spoken with Jesus and Joseph Smith. You guys are wrong. I'm the best boy. And so when these big shifts happen, for example, we need to stop doing polygamy, a bunch of guys go, now you're just not the one. I am him. Me. I'm the special boy, actually. And I spoke with them. And that's what a lot of these guys did, including this family called the Woolies. The guy who is essentially credited with being the founding father of all of these break-off polygamous groups is this guy named Loren C. Woolley. And his like origin story is that the president at the time basically, so at that time, John Taylor was the president when he's telling the story. It's a little bit later on that he and his group of like-minded gentlemen started to practice in secret. So this is so many names, and I'm trying to make it as succinct as possible because you don't need to know all of this. But essentially, this guy, Loren C. Woolley, and this little group of guys, they were still inside the Latter-day Saints Church at the turn of the century. And they were just there, and they were doing this secret side quest. They called it the Council of Friends, which is actually a reference to something Joseph Smith tried to start back in the day. But this was their secret little Council of Friends, and it mostly revolved around how they needed to keep fucking a bunch of ladies. So they were in there for a while, kind of practicing this way. And after the declaration happened, there were a few decades there where the ideas were getting kind of sorted out. And this guy, Loren, and these other guys who called themselves Council of Friends, they were pushing against the way the mainstream church wanted to go. And so this is a lot of history crammed into a paragraph. You can learn about all of this easily. Probably look elsewhere that's not on the LDS website. But suffice it to say that there was this one break-off at the very end of the 19th century and into the early 1900s, first and foremost, with this guy, Loren, and his father. Because, of course, you want to do polygamy with your dad. That's just how it goes. We'll get, so,
Oh, sorry.
No.
I keep picturing, like, the dad's fucking the girl and the son is the cuck in the chair. Or like maybe the Eiffel Tower, whatever. Let's keep going.
Yeah, it's hard to say what's going on there. I will go on to say that in these breakoff groups, in a very sad way, still to this day, incest is a huge problem, and there's a lot of medical defects and stuff because of that in the generations. But anyway, so John W. Woolley and Lauren C. Woolley, that's the father-son cohorts, and their little group were in essence banished from the greater community of the Mormons by the early 1930s. And this was after they had tried again. So they had that first declaration in the 1890s. They weren't stopping polygamy enough for the state to kind of like stop paying attention. And so they put out a second declaration in 1904 being like, guys, we really mean it this time. No more, okay? No more polygamy. And they're all like, sure, buddy. They continued it on until they were literally banished in the early 1930s.
Wow, we need to be banishing people more.
I don't know. This didn't work out well for a lot of people because when they got banished, it becomes this like martyrdom, right?
Oh, it almost like justifies your bullshit religion even more.
Yeah, it does. So when they got excommunicated, they went like, fine, we're out of here. And they took their camp and they moved to this area of Utah called Short Creek, which is literally right on the southern border touching Arizona. It's like literally on the border of Utah and Arizona. So it's very, very far from Salt Lake City, really. It's like 6-hour drive, which if you were not in a car would take a very long time.
Yeah.
Short Creek is where a lot of the kind of like spin, like smooth jazz of polygamy was formed, because even though they had polygamy as far back as Joseph, what we see today really developed from this banishment in the early 1900s. So the long and short of this timeline is the proclamation of no more polygamy happened in 1980. They had the second one in 1904. Mostly, this all became a Short Creek thing in the 1930s. And those fighting for polygamy kind of went off into this area. And from that Short Creek group formed several other groups that branched out.
Yeah, I'm looking at, I just typed in Short Creek, and you immediately see the girls with the bangs and the dresses.
Oh, yeah. They're still there. I mean, it's now called Colorado City, but it's still Short Creek. So, which is confusing because Colorado is not either of the states that are involved. But while there are multiple polygamous Mormon cults today, they are mostly accepted to have been sprung from this branch, not from each coming from Joseph Smith's or Brigham's church separately, if that makes sense. So it's one chunk left Brigham, and then from that chunk, little branches kind of crackled out.
I see, because the LDS was like, no more polygamy. They said it twice, no more polygamy. And then this branch was like, oh yeah, fuck you guys. I'm going off here. And then they made like...
They all fought with each other.
Other.
There was a bunch of special boys inside of that little branch, and then they all went their own separate ways.
This is just tribal warfare at this point.
It is. I mean, I think religion is most of the time, but especially because we can watch it happen in real time. This was like our grandma's, great-grandma's time period.
Damn.
This just happened. So... they're all from this one little thing, including some of the really well-known ones, like the AUB, which we mentioned, and was also made famous by the reality show Sister Wives, which has been on for like 20 years. I'm sure you've at least heard of Sister Wives.
I've heard of Sister Wives.
They are from the AUB. They're a branch off of the main Mormon church. And much like the AUB, a lot of these offshoots of the polygamous kind believe in a lot of the same tenets, including
the law of consecration, also known as United Order,
which is like their baptizing process, which is not that dissimilar from the mainstream Mormon church.
The Adam God teachings taught by Brigham Young and other early leaders of the LDS Church. The principle of blood atonement,
which is a thing that was taken away from the mainstream church, but is still practiced by a lot of the polygamous churches, which is essentially saying, if you betray us, you have to atone with your blood.
Like so shed your blood?
Yeah.
Like kill yourself?
Well, it's like they say, oh, it's symbolic, but it means like murder. But, you know, they kind of go like, but it's just, you know, symbolic or whatever.
What?
Yeah. I mean, that's how the old school church was. They're using the Brigham Young method Yeah.
All right. The execution of
exclusion.
The exclusion of black men from the priesthood.
Yeah, they really love white people.
The belief that missionaries should teach, quote, without purse or script.
Which is like a biblical idea, Jesus walking around.
Just being like, hey, God's cool.
Sitting backwards on a chair, rapping about the gospel.
So this sounds pretty inherently violent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. There's no way to maintain that level of control without violence and without hateful ideas. And again, as we mentioned here, they don't believe in that black people deserve human rights, essentially. Even though they don't openly say that when they're not wearing the robes, it's only white people. And also, a lot of these sects are a lot of there's 3 families that keep repopulate. You know what I'm saying? It's not good.
Oh, again, it's just beasts. I don't want to call them beasts. I'm sorry, but I'm just picturing you're in the middle of nowhere and you got your nose on your forehead because your dad fucked your uncle. And you can't talk, you can't read. What are we doing here?
Man, that'd be cool if because they only believe in genetic biology. They don't have gender. So if it's the dad fucking the uncle and one of them gets pregnant, that's honestly cool as hell. We got to talk about what happened there. So again, a reminder, the belief system remains extremely racist. They also believe in women having limited human rights, and that's ordained by their horny god. Women are less than. Even though they won't say those words, they'll say that they're cherished, precious little apples or whatever,
Oh, yeah, I love the, God just made us do different things. See, I am the rational man who is at the head of the household.
So rational.
And you are my slave. So that's what God said. And it's just 2 different things.
It's 2. What's it called? Oh my God, what's it called? Complementarianism.
Right.
Yeah. So, and that's not Mormon. That's much more like evangelical, I believe.
Yeah.
But a quick internet search shows that there were at least 19 spinoffs that believe in polygamy, ranging from 100 members all the way up to 10,000 members, depending on which sect it is. Each one having a guy who started it going, he's the real Slim Shady, he's the guy. No, I'm the guy. No, I'm the guy. They all believe this. And then afterwards, there's a bunch of guys behind them claiming to be the prophet apparent of that group, right? And so there's many, 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 many of these spinoffs, because when you raise men and boys to believe that they're special little magic boys for no reason, guess what? A bunch of them think that they're special little magic boys. Isn't that crazy how that works out?
Right, and even in their own religion, only a few of you can get your own planet. So it's not even you're all special boys. It's no, but I'm the more special boy of the special boys.
Yeah, well, not all of them will get into the celestial kingdom, that's for sure. And that's the most special one.
So this religion inherently is just warfare.
It's an MLM.
Yeah.
You're trying to get to the top tier. Most people aren't going to, but you're promising if you keep working really hard, you will.
Then you will, yeah.
So you can look at this. There's a chart you can find, actually. If you go straight to Wikipedia and look up Mormon fundamentalist leaders specifically, on that page, it will show you a nice flow chart of how the fundamentalist groups kind of branched out. And it's a really, if you learn visually, it's a really easy way to see it. So you can see that in the early 1900s, there was all of these breakoffs who were like, you guys won't let us do polygamies anymore, and we want to. And so they did. Each of these sects clash on certain topics, like, things like you shouldn't be able to wear red, or you can or can't do work on Sundays, or should you marry children? Oh, what was that? What was the last one? Yeah, so there are modern day branches, because again, I must press that a lot of these sects are less than 100 years old. That's only a couple generations back. And even though they separated, they have a lot of the same belief systems. They still believe in the Book of Mormon, Joseph Smith, all that stuff. But some of them really lean into stuff that Joseph Smith was doing that he said was fine because God said it. And Joseph Smith had brides who were 13, 14, 15 years old, multiple brides. A lot of these breakoffs really lean into that part of the story. If you know even a little bit about the FLDS, it's probably either that they have those wacky hairdos and the prairie dresses, or that their leader and sitting prophet, Warren Jeffs, is in prison for life for child sexual assault crimes.
Yes. And this is, again, goes with the banishing thing with the, like, you're a martyr, because now they're even more like, oh, he's the man.
They still listen to him, his directions and his prophecies from prison. They still listen to him. He still gives them directions.
At least he can't physically touch little girls.
He can't, but he instructs other men to, and they do it. So I would like to reiterate, he is still giving them revelation from prison, which is wild. The FLDS is one of the many branch-offs from the Council of Friends from Short Creek. So that first exodus from the 30s, it became the FLDS decades later. And like all these polygamous sects, there's a messy, confusing history as each guy vies for the kingship. But essentially, one of the big turning points in Short Creek was the 1953 Short Creek Raid. That feels so modern because we have family members, most of us who are still alive, who were alive in 1953 when this happened. So this is now coming towards more modern history. So from the Short Creek people, there was this raid that happened because, again, the U.S. government, who was pissed about it in the late 1800s, are still like, hey, we said we didn't like the polygamy stuff happening, and you're doing it still. And so the government is still kind of coming in and like poking the bear with this group. And so there's this sort of paradox, this sort of double-edged sword thing with it, that much like the actions in Ruby Ridge or in Waco, there's this thing that's happening that's not very good. And they're concerned with the polygamy. There's not really a thing called child abuse in the 1950s, so they're not as worried about that, I guess. Like,
right.
That was just a lifestyle, was child abuse.
I feel like child abuse didn't become a talking point till like the 90s.
Yeah, it's so weird that all the boomers are all fucked up. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So the government does not want the polygamy stuff happening. And I think a lot of people in the world outside also agree with this. They didn't like that people were kind of in this weird cult and there's all these people wearing the same outfits and there's all these multiple lives. Like, they don't like this. However, there was this backlash and criticism for it because of the way the government handled this really sensitive event, just like Ruby Ridge, just like Waco.
Right. They just went in there and just shot everybody.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, you just killed like a lady over there.
Yeah.
And the dog.
Yeah, exactly. And for real. And this wasn't as about mass murder, but it was about the stealing of all the children. So they came in and they were like, hey, get out of here. This ain't our laws. What are you doing? And then they all went, and they started running and they grabbed all the children up. And they took them away. A lot of them ended up in foster care. A lot of them never saw their families again. And there was this level of cruelty that resonated with many outsiders in this process. And it was like they didn't have a good plan. Like, they didn't like that they were doing it. And a lot of people were like, yeah, we don't like that too. But then the government was like, all right, we'll just go in. And we'll just go like, no. But there was like no plan for after that.
Yeah, no like social worker being like, hey, so we got to think about like a child being ripped from their mother.
Yeah, exactly. So those women who were also subjected to servitude in this community lost their children on top of that. And then these kids who don't know that anything is wrong with what they're doing, suddenly their families are gone and they're thrown into this other world that's not Short Creek. It's like they don't know what society is and they're just suddenly like traumatized in there. So a lot of people actually were really mad after this happened. And beyond that, so the outside world, like, they got all this criticism. And because of that, there wasn't a ton of pushback when these groups started to sort of like come back together in Short Creek, because the government was like, ooh, well, they didn't like that. So maybe we're not going to touch it again, because, of course, after they raided this in the 1950s, a lot of these people still were going to come back together. They're not going to suddenly be like, you know what, the government's right. I don't believe in polygamy anymore. No. They were actually, much like the killing of Joseph Smith, this act gave the fundamentalists fuel for martyrdom, for being like, now we must cling even tighter to our religion and our women and our people. Now that we see that the evil, ugly world is coming to take our children away. And they did this horrible thing by stealing these children.
This is like the government starting ISIS. It's what it reminds me of.
Yeah. And it sucks because it's like this, again, nuanced conversation that people don't want to have, where it's like, yeah, I think that what they were doing in that community is probably really fucked up. But the government coming in and doing that didn't help anything. And it traumatized a bunch of people. And the government looks stupid. So nobody's a good guy, in my opinion, here. But now it gives these people, it gives them fuel to then be like, well, now I
really hate everybody.
And God obviously is testing us and stuff like that. So they come back and they start to build groups up again. And the area's name is changed from Short Creek to Colorado City, but most people still know it as Short Creek because of the history. And over the next couple decades, the face of the community begins to change, and in my opinion, for the worse. In the 1980s, a priesthood holder in the main LDS church named Rulon Jeffs becomes the prophet of this community, and it was renamed the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the FLDS.
Oh, we're getting spicy now.
Yeah, so after this raid and all these people came back, this is sort of then the roots of the FLDS coming up. And though I would like to also preface this, because you think about these people, they've just lived on the outside forever. So Rulon Jeffs probably doesn't know what he's doing is wrong. No, Rulon Jeffs was raised in the mainstream Mormon church. He was an accountant. And then he found out his father had been secretly a polygamist. He found out about this whole other world, and he's like, hell yeah. Yeah, I like this. And he went in, and he became the leader of this group after living in modern society.
Wow, so the cuck chair becomes the man.
Well, he didn't know his dad was a polygamist for a lot of his life.
Okay.
Well, when he became a young adult, his dad told him. But, yeah. So Rulon he's like, oh, cool, my dad. Yeah, exactly. He's like, I'm going to cuck my dad now. But no, he goes into this community. He goes down to the Colorado City area, and he goes up through the ranks. And after there was, schism 1,350 or whatever in 1984, people who stayed in Short Creek, aka Colorado City, remained under the now leadership of Rulon Jeffs. While there are multiple branch offs, as we've mentioned, the FLDS is one of the largest to have survived. Unfortunately, what the Jeffs family has done to that community for the last few decades is nothing short of sexual slavery farms. And I am not exaggerating. It's horrific. These different sects have their own different styles and flavors, I guess. And I've never read into one that has a good history, but what the Jeffs family has done is really kind of horrific. So a lot of people know a thing or two about this cult. There's been many docs. There's been many shows about it, books, whatever. There was a very popular documentary in 2022 called Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey that talks about the Jeffs legacy. And there's many other ones. One book I recommend if you want to look further into it is called The Witness Wore Red by Rebecca Musser, who was one of Rulon Jeffs' brides. She became the 19th of his bride as a teenager. He was 85 when that happened.
Can you imagine being like a teen and then you just have like a maggot-sized cock shoved inside of you?
Well, I mean,
picture his cock looks like a maggot. It's like soft and wet and pointy.
Unfortunately, she does talk about what she had to do in her book.
I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to make a joke about her life.
No, I know.
Just picturing
you please tear apart Rulon Jeffs all you want. He's disgusting. But so her book, The Witness Wore Red, came out in 2013. Rulon Jeffs, again, he was 85 when she had to marry him, and she was a teenager. And he was the 19th of his brides at that point. This was a guy who was an accountant who's now cosplaying. Okay, just so we're all clear. What she describes her life like with him is scarier than anything that you'll find on Shudder. Rulon died in 2002, but his many children carried on the legacy of nightmares, and his baby boy Warren Jeffs, as mentioned, remains the current prophet to this day from prison. Rebecca's book can break down their lifestyle far better than I ever could. I recommend giving it a read, though I do warn you, it's tough to get through some of it due to the traumatic experience she had. Chapter 6, specifically, after she was forced to wed, this 85-year-old creepster is especially rough. I'm going to give you a brief excerpt from it. It's pretty bad, but it's not as bad as it gets in the book, so just fair.
I do. I answered finally, my voice faint. My father sealed our marriage by the authority of the holy priesthood in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. I froze, and the crowd laughed at my wide eyes as Rulon pecked my lips matter-of-factly and then grinned triumphantly.
So that was her first kiss ever.
And just, again, it's got to feel crazy because everybody's in this world and they're all laughing and you're having to go against your own soul, your own shadow that's just kind of like, no, flee, you have to go.
Yeah.
And you thought, like, no, you're unnormal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, you feel like you're crazy.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a little later in the chapter that very night.
With surprising strength, however, he roughly pulled me to him with his other arm and kissed me. It was over before I realized what had happened. Then he kissed me again, and my whole body shook from disgust. The slobber from his mouth was still on my lips, and though I flinched, I didn't dare wipe it off. He held on to me for a long moment before pushing himself away. "Good night, sweetheart," he said. "A kiss is enough for tonight." He turned over, and I stared at the back of his head. A kiss is enough? Enough of what? So she doesn't know what sex is.
So much like pretty much all fundamentalist religions, Mormonism and these branches of Mormonism are simultaneously preaching this wholeness and purity to women and girls. But once you become an owned object by a guy, you are expected to be a sexual being without any education. And so it is rape. There's no other way to explain that. Like that, the definition of what happens is rape. Rape over and over and over, and you don't even know what rape is because you don't know what sex is. So those are what these communities do to literally every girl and woman in them. So I definitely recommend you read her book. It's hard. It's a hard read, but it's good. It's also very interesting, and she does escape, and she does help convict Rulon's son, Warren.
Oh my God, she is strong.
Yeah, she's great. She's only 48 years old right now.
Wow.
So think about how that connects. She's 48 currently. She married Rulon Jeffs, who was born in like 1908 or some shit. Like I forget how old he was. I think he was near 100 when he died. So she was married to that guy. He was born, let's see, what year was he born? Yeah, Rulon Jeffs was born in 1909, and one of his brides currently is 48 years old. So that's cool.
Wow.
Love that. So that is the FLDS. Another branch off of that same community was and is really, really big into child marriage and incest. Called themselves the Latter-day Church of Christ, but is more well known as the Kingston Clan. They are, unfortunately, pretty notorious for incest. There is a modern-day influencer named Amanda Ray who escaped the Kingston Clan, and she speaks about them at length if you want to hear her talk about them. She had to experience a lot of incest, a lot of rape. And when she saw it, experienced it, all that stuff. But she's very open about it if you want to learn more about them. Many people have also become familiar with the Lafferty brothers and the murders they committed from the release of the book Under the Banner of Heaven. This is also a good resource to learn about the various sects that practice incest and polygamy today, as well as 100 years ago. AUB remains the largest, as far as we can tell, polygamous group, 10,000 members roughly. It's hard to know because they shift a lot, and it's not like they're taking, they're not doing like, what's it called, censuses and stuff. And also they're having children and not reporting them all the time.
Yeah,
so,
if you don't have a social security number, how can I even find you if you're not on the registry?
Which is, again, something that we should all be very concerned with, because if a kid is not accounted for outside of their home, we think that parents are allowed to just do what they want with them legally. And a lot of times it's horrific what happens to those kids. And so we should all be advocates for these children. Like, child safety is a community effort because sometimes in their own homes they are not safe. And we have that group. They are the one that is the most connected to the mainstream church. They are literalists of the Book of Mormon, like many of these fundamentalist groups. They want to take it word for word, which is not safe for many people. The Kingston Clan has upwards of 7,500 people still. FLDS is somewhere around 4,500. And there's also many other ones that are much smaller. I want to set this framework because as we conclude our series, our entire season on the crimes and hidden victims in the greater LDS church, it's important to note that the mainstream church would have you believe that this is just this like couple people.
A cuckoo. Yeah, they're over there. We don't know. And like really, your grandparents know some of the people that started this.
And they're more connected today more than they want to tell you. That they don't think like this, but this is simply not true. So stay tuned for part 2 of Polygamy and the final thoughts on our entire season as we are coming very close to the end.
This is scary, Natalie. I was talking to a friend the other day, and they just had no idea that Mormonism was so entrenched in politics, and they had so much money, and they were just like, oh yeah, I just thought that there was that weird religion over there. And I kind of broke it down a little bit, and they're like, what? They're in law, they're making this?
Girl, same. It's why we wanted to focus on this, because it has huge implications for the country.
This is an enemy growing in the shadows.
Yeah.
That you don't even know it exists. So you think, oh, that's just that small little cuckoo church over there. And they're just getting powerful, and money talks.
Yeah.
Especially now, today, America's being sold at the highest bidder. If you have $1 billion, you can just hand that over to the president and change a law or two.
So, yes, and the only power that we have is the people. We have the voice of many, so it's important for us to talk about these things, and we will finish up this story, this series, this season next week and the week after, and we're gonna be wrapping it up.
And then, just margaritas on the beach.
Yep, fixed it.
Fixed it.
No, we will be supplementing a lot of this on our YouTube channel, so please go over there and subscribe. We're going to be making all kinds of different video content, and I'll be talking more in depth about some of these topics that we can only brush on because of the vastness of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, go give us a like and all the shit, the bell and the click and all the stuff.
That's right. And maybe take some ballet.
Please, it's great.
Get your shins fucked up.
Coming up next week, the term Lost Boys may drudge up thoughts of Rufio and Tinkerbell, but in Mormon land, this title is used to describe the nature in which boys also suffer under polygamy. It feels as though the victims of this lifestyle are almost endless.